In 1981, a young couple landed in Los Angeles from South Korea with almost nothing. They didn't speak English. They had no college degrees, no money, no connections. The husband took 3 jobs just to survive: pumping gas, pouring coffee, working in a clothing store. 3 decades later, that same man and his wife were worth nearly $6 billion, running a fashion empire of over 800 stores across the globe. It was one of the greatest immigrant success stories America had ever seen. The American dream made real. And then, almost as fast as they'd built it, they watched it collapse. This is the story of Do-won and Jin Sook Chang, the couple who built Forever 21 from $11,000, and the single mistake that brought their empire crashing down. The beginning was as humble as it gets. Do-won Chang was born in 1954 in Seoul, South Korea, into a modest life. In 1981, he and his wife Jin Sook made the leap to America, chasing the dream that pulled millions before them. But the dream did not roll out a red carpet. They arrived with high school diplomas and barely a word of English. To make ends meet, Do-won worked 3 jobs at once: a coffee shop in the morning, a gas station in the afternoon, a clothing store in the evening. He was exhausted, broke, and grinding. But while he was pumping gas, he noticed something that would change his life. The customers who pulled up in the nicest cars, the Mercedes, the BMWs, almost all worked in one industry: the garment business. Do-won didn't just notice it, he studied it. He started asking questions, learning everything he could about fashion and clothing. He had found his door. In 1984, with $11,000 they had scraped and saved over 3 brutal years, the Changs opened a tiny 900 square foot clothing store in the Highland Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. They called it Fashion 21. It catered first to the local Korean immigrant community, stocked with cheap, trendy clothes sourced from LA's Korean American garment manufacturers. And here's where Jin Sook's secret weapon emerged. She had an almost uncanny eye for spotting trends, for seeing what was about to be popular and getting affordable versions onto the racks fast. That instinct was gold. In its very first year, that little 900 square foot shop pulled in $700,000 in sales. The Changs realized they hadn't just opened a store, they'd stumbled onto a machine. So they did what every ambitious entrepreneur dreams of. They scaled. They opened a new store roughly every 6 months. They rebranded from Fashion 21 to Forever 21, a name Do-won chose to capture an eternal, universal desire to feel forever young, forever trendy. And the business model was revolutionary for America. Cheap, fashionable clothes that copied the latest runway looks and hit the stores fast, with inventory turning over so quickly that the shop always felt new. Today we call this fast fashion, and Forever 21 became America's homegrown answer to European giants, like Zara and H&M. By the 2000s, it was a juggernaut. By 2015, the company was raking in an estimated $4.5 billion a year, with stores in dozens of countries. The 2 broke immigrants, who couldn't speak English, were now worth nearly $6 billion. The dream was complete. But buried inside that explosive success was the exact flaw that would destroy them. Because the very thing that built Forever 21, relentless, aggressive expansion, became the thing that killed it. And the fatal mistake came down to timing and stubbornness. When the 2008 financial crisis hit and the economy crumbled, most retailers retreated, terrified. Forever 21 did the opposite. Seeing cheap real estate and rivals going bankrupt, the Changs went on an aggressive shopping spree, snapping up enormous store locations in expensive, high-traffic malls. And they didn't just open more stores, they opened gigantic ones, believing that bigger stores meant more customers. We're talking flagship locations of 90,000 square feet in places like Times Square. They were signing long, expensive leases on massive spaces, betting everything on one assumption: that shoppers would keep flooding into physical malls forever. They were catastrophically wrong, because at the exact moment Forever 21 was doubling down on giant physical stores, the entire world was moving online. E-commerce exploded. Amazon, ASOS, and a wave of online retailers transformed how people, especially Forever 21's young millennial shoppers, bought clothes. Foot traffic in American malls began to collapse, and Forever 21 was now trapped, locked into hundreds of enormous, hugely expensive stores in dying malls, paying rent on space that fewer and fewer customers were walking into. The empire had been built on physical retail, and physical retail was crumbling beneath their feet. The numbers tell the brutal story. At its 2015 peak, Forever 21 was bringing in around $4.5 billion. Just a couple of years later, sales had plunged by over $1 billion. The company had roughly 800 stores, big, shiny, and wildly expensive to operate. Debt piled higher and higher. There were other wounds too. Endless lawsuits over copying other designers' work, and younger shoppers increasingly demanding better quality and turning away from disposable fashion. The Changs tried to downsize, tried to restructure, tried to save it, but the math had become impossible. In September 2019, Forever 21 filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The fall was staggering in its speed. The Changs' combined net worth, which had peaked mere $6 billion, collapsed by more than $4 billion. They lost their billionaire status entirely. The empire they built from $11,000 was sold off in 2020 for just $81 million, a fraction of what it had once been worth. And the company's decline didn't stop there. Years later, under its new owners, the US arm of Forever 21 filed for bankruptcy a second time, ultimately shutting down its American stores for good. The brand the Changs had poured their lives into was, in its original form, finished. Now, in fairness, the Changs did not end up on the street. Even after losing billions, they reportedly retained well over $1 billion in personal wealth. But they lost the thing they had actually built: the empire, the company, the legacy. They went from one of the wealthiest couples in America, symbols of the immigrant dream, to a cautionary tale taught in business schools. So what's the lesson carved into the rise and fall of Forever 21? It's that the strength that builds an empire can be the exact weakness that destroys it. Do-won and Jin Sook Chang succeeded because they were fearless, aggressive, and relentless in their expansion. But they couldn't recognize the moment when the world changed beneath them, when fearless expansion became reckless overreach, and when the physical stores that made them rich became the anchor that dragged them down. They bet everything that the future would look like the past. It didn't. Two immigrants who arrived with nothing built one of the most recognizable brands on earth, and proved that in business, knowing when to stop can matter just as much as knowing when to grow. If you love these untold rise and fall stories of the people behind the world's biggest brands, subscribe. Because uncovering the real human drama behind the logos is exactly what this channel does. And tell me in the comments, do you think Forever 21 could have survived if it had embraced e-commerce in time? Or was the fall inevitable? And whose empire should I break down next? Drop it below.